Marcus Chen had seen enough of the galaxy's ugliness in his 35 years as a cargo hauler, but the sight before him on Kepler Station made his stomach turn. Two alien children huddled in the shadowy corner between waste disposal units, their thin frames shaking with hunger and cold. The elder sister couldn't have been more than 12 in human years, though her species aged differently. Her violet skin had faded to a sickly pale lavender, and her large, luminous eyes were sunken with malnutrition. She clutched her younger sibling protectively, a tiny thing who couldn't have been older than 6, whose breathing came in shallow, labored gasps. They were Zarathi, Marcus realized with a pang of recognition. He'd met their kind before during trade runs to the Outer Rim. Beautiful beings with crystalline hair and voices like silver bells when they sang. These two looked nothing like the proud, graceful Zarathi he'd encountered in better circumstances. The station's marketplace bustled around them, aliens of a dozen species haggling over goods and services. Nobody paid attention to the starving children. In this part of the galaxy, suffering was commonplace. Kepler Station existed in the lawless zone between 3 territorial borders, a haven for smugglers, pirates, and those running from their past. Marcus had stopped here to refuel his ship, the Wandering Star, and pick up supplies before his next cargo run to the inner colonies. He'd planned to grab some food, maybe a drink, and be on his way within a few hours. He had deadlines to meet and bills to pay. But something about the way the older sister held her sibling made him pause. She whispered something in their native tongue, probably a lullaby or words of comfort. The younger one's breathing grew more steady, and Marcus could see the fierce love and protection in the elder's posture despite her own obvious weakness. He thought of his own sister back on Earth, how she used to hold him during thunderstorms when they were kids. Their parents had died in a transport accident when Marcus was 8 and Sarah was 14. She'd raised him, worked 3 jobs to keep them together, made sure he had food even when she went hungry herself. Sarah was gone now, too, taken by the plague that had swept through the Luna colonies 5 years ago. Marcus carried her memory with him across the stars, along with the guilt that he hadn't been there when she needed him most. He'd been on a cargo run to Proxima Centauri, chasing a big payday that seemed so important at the time. The older Zarathi child looked up suddenly, her enormous eyes meeting his across the crowd. There was no begging in her gaze, no plea for help, just quiet dignity and determination to protect her sister until the end. It was a look Marcus recognized all too well. He made his decision. Marcus approached slowly, his hands visible and empty. Many species in this sector were wary of humans, who had gained a reputation as unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. He knelt down a safe distance away, making himself appear less threatening. "Hey there," he said softly in Galactic Standard. "I'm Marcus. What are your names?" The older child tensed, pulling her sister closer. She studied him carefully before responding in accented Standard. "I am Zara. This is my sister Kira. We require no assistance." Pride, even in desperation. Marcus respected that. "I can see you're taking good care of your sister," he said. "You're doing a great job. But I was about to get some food, and I always order too much. Hate to see it go to waste." Zara's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd probably heard empty promises before, maybe even cruel tricks. "We have no currency to offer in exchange." "Wasn't looking for payment," Marcus replied. "Just hate eating alone, you know. Gets lonely out here in the black." He stood slowly and walked toward the nearest food vendor, a gastropod alien who ran a small stand selling various species-appropriate meals. Marcus ordered 3 portions of the universal protein paste that most humanoid species could digest, along with some fruit juice and water. The vendor, whose name was Klep, according to his sign, watched the transaction with multiple eye stalks. "You feeding strays now, human? They've been here 3 days. Bad for business having hunger-sick aliens near my stand." "How long since they've eaten?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice neutral. Who knows? Probably days. Their ship crashed in the debris field outside the station. Salvage crews brought them in, but no family claimed them. Station security would have spaced them by now, but the older one keeps moving them around, staying out of sight. Marcus felt his jaw clench. Spacing children for the crime of being homeless and parentless. He'd seen the galaxy's cruelty before, but it still made his blood boil. Here's a thought, Clep, Marcus said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. Maybe having hungry kids near your stand is bad for business because decent people don't like eating while others starve. Ever consider that? The vendor's eye stalks retracted slightly at Marcus's tone. Humans had a reputation for violence when their moral codes were violated, and Clep apparently didn't want to test that reputation. Marcus carried the food back to where Zara and Kira waited. The younger child was now unconscious, her breathing very shallow. Zara looked up at him with desperate hope mixed with suspicion. She needs medical attention, Marcus observed. The medical bay requires payment we cannot provide, Zara replied, her voice cracking slightly. But she is strong. She will survive. Marcus set the food down within reach and sat across from them, opening his own portion. The smell of the protein paste wasn't particularly appetizing, but it was nutritious and filling. Tell you what, he said casually. I eat first, show you it's safe. Then maybe you two can help me finish the rest. Deal? He took a bite and made a show of swallowing, then waited. Hunger was a powerful motivator, and he could see Zara's resolve weakening as the smell of food reached her. Finally, she reached for one of the containers with shaking hands. She took a small bite, chewed carefully, then quickly gave some to her sister, coaxing the semi-conscious child to swallow. Marcus watched as they ate with the desperate efficiency of the truly starving, trying to pace themselves but unable to resist devouring the food quickly. He'd seen that kind of hunger before, in refugee camps and disaster zones. It was a hunger that went beyond the physical, a hunger born of hopelessness. Your ship, he said after they'd finished eating. What happened? Zara wiped her mouth carefully before answering. Engine failure in the asteroid field. Our parents... She paused, swallowing hard. Our parents were killed in the crash. Kira and I made it to an escape pod. I'm sorry, Marcus said, and meant it. That's rough. We were traveling to the Zarathi colonies on Vela Prime, Zara continued. Our father had secured work there in the crystal mines. But without transport, she trailed off, the impossibility of their situation clear in her voice. Marcus did quick mental calculations. Vela Prime was 2 weeks away by commercial transport, and passage for 2 would cost more than most people made in a year. For refugees with no documentation or currency, it might as well have been in another galaxy. The mining colonies, Marcus mused. Dangerous work, but good pay if you survive it. Father was not afraid of hard work, Zara said with quiet pride. He said humans and Zarathi were similar in that way, both species willing to do what others will not. Marcus raised an eyebrow. He knew humans? He fought alongside human soldiers during the Keth incursion at Rigel 7, Zara explained. He said humans were crazy, but loyal. That when they chose to protect someone, they would die before breaking that promise. The Keth incursion. Marcus remembered hearing about that conflict. The Keth, a violent insectoid species, had attempted to claim Rigel 7 and its valuable resources. A coalition of species had fought them off, with human marines providing crucial ground support. It had been a bloody campaign. Your father was a soldier? Communications specialist, Zara corrected. But when the fighting started, everyone became soldiers. He said the humans taught him that strength is not about size or weapons, but about refusing to abandon those who count on you. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. He thought again of Sarah, of promises he'd made and failed to keep. Young Kira stirred in her sister's arms, opening fever-bright eyes. She looked at Marcus with curiosity rather than fear, perhaps too sick to fully understand their situation. "Sister," she whispered in their native tongue, her voice like distant music. "Is this the human father spoke of? The ones who keep promises?" Zara's translation came quickly, but Marcus caught enough of the words to understand. The trust in the child's eyes was almost too much to bear. "What's she asking?" Marcus said, though he suspected he knew. "She wants to know if you are going to help us reach the colony," Zara said quietly. "She is very young. She does not understand that strangers have no obligation to aid us." Marcus looked at the two sisters, remembering his own childhood fears and his sister's fierce protection. He thought about the promises he'd made and broken, the people he'd failed to save. He thought about Sarah, and what she would have done in his position. The smart thing would be to walk away. He was a cargo hauler, not a charity service. He had bills, debts, obligations. Taking on passengers would complicate everything, especially refugees without proper documentation. But sometimes the smart thing wasn't the right thing. "Well," Marcus said slowly, "happens I've got a cargo run to the inner systems coming up. Could probably swing by Vela Prime on the way." Zara's eyes widened. "You would do this? But we have nothing to offer in payment." "Actually," Marcus said, standing and brushing off his pants, "I could use some help with ship maintenance during the journey, and someone who speaks Zarathi might come in handy for trade negotiations. Consider it a working passage." For the first time since he'd seen them, Zara smiled. It transformed her face completely, showing him what she must have looked like before hunger and desperation had worn her down. "You would trust us aboard your vessel?" she asked. "Your father was right about humans," Marcus replied. "When we decide to protect someone, we keep that promise." He helped them gather their few possessions and led them toward the docking bay where the wandering star waited. As they walked, Kira leaning heavily on her sister's shoulder, Marcus contacted the station's medical facility and arranged for the child to receive treatment, charging it to his account. The medical technician, a competent Altarian with 4 arms and a professional demeanor, examined Kira quickly and administered nutrient injections and antibiotics. Within an hour, the little girl was looking much stronger, though she would need several days of rest and proper nutrition to fully recover. As they approached his ship, Marcus realized he was making a decision that would change his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. He was taking responsibility for 2 alien children, promising to deliver them safely to a distant colony world. It went against every survival instinct he'd developed in his years as an independent operator. But watching Zara help her sister up the boarding ramp, seeing the hope returning to both their faces, Marcus knew he was making the right choice. Sarah would have approved. The Wandering Star was a modest cargo vessel, built for reliability rather than comfort. It had 3 small passenger cabins, a basic galley, and a cargo hold that could accommodate a decent-sized shipment. Marcus had bought it used and spent years customizing it to his needs. He showed the sisters to one of the passenger cabins, explaining the ship's systems and safety procedures. Zara listened intently, asking intelligent questions about navigation and life support. Despite her youth, she clearly had some technical knowledge. "Your father taught you about spacecraft?" Marcus asked. "All Zarathi children learn basic technical skills," Zara explained. "Our people believe that understanding the tools that sustain life is essential wisdom." Marcus nodded approvingly. Practical education was something he could respect. As he prepared the ship for departure, Marcus found himself wondering what he'd gotten himself into. 2 weeks to Vela Prime, traveling with refugees who might attract unwanted attention from authorities or pirates. His cargo manifest would need careful adjustment to account for the extra passengers. But as he heard Kira's laughter echoing through the ship's corridors for the first time, a sound like silver bells in a gentle breeze, Marcus decided that whatever complications lay ahead, they were worth facing. The wandering star lifted off from Kepler Station just as the local sun was setting, casting long shadows across the docking bay. As the station fell away behind them and the stars opened up ahead, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. He felt like he was finally going home. 3 days into the journey, Marcus discovered that taking care of 2 Zerathi children was far more complicated than he'd imagined. It wasn't their behavior that posed the challenge, quite the opposite. Zara and Kira were polite, helpful, and grateful to the point that it made him uncomfortable. The problem was that they were learning about humans at an alarming rate, and their observations were starting to make him question everything he thought he knew about himself. "Marcus," Zara said during their morning meal, "why do humans eat when they are sad?" Marcus paused with a spoonful of reconstituted eggs halfway to his mouth. "What makes you think I'm sad?" "Your eating patterns," Kira chimed in, her voice now clear and strong after days of proper nutrition. "Yesterday, when you spoke to your business contact on the communication system, he made you angry. But after the call ended, you went to the galley and consumed 3 nutrition bars in rapid succession, even though you had eaten a full meal 2 hours earlier. The observation was accurate and uncomfortably perceptive." Marcus had indeed stress-eaten after a frustrating conversation with his regular cargo broker, who'd been pressuring him to take on a shipment of questionable legality. "Humans sometimes eat for comfort," Marcus admitted. "It's not always about hunger." "Interesting," Zara said, making a note on the data pad Marcus had given her to help with ship's inventory. "Zerathi sing when distressed. The harmonic vibrations help regulate our emotional state." "Maybe you could teach me sometime," Marcus said, then immediately wondered why he'd made the offer. He wasn't particularly musical, and alien songs would probably sound strange to human ears. But Kira's face lit up with delight. "Really? You want to learn Zerathi harmonies?" Before Marcus could reconsider, both sisters launched into what could only be described as the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. Their voices blended in perfect harmony, creating complex overtones that seemed to resonate not just in his ears, but in his bones. The melody was haunting and peaceful, like water flowing over ancient stones. When they finished, Marcus realized he was holding his breath. "That was incredible." "It is a song of gratitude," Zara explained. "We sing it to honor those who show kindness to strangers." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "I'm not used to being thanked for doing the right thing." "Perhaps that is why it is significant when you do it," Zara replied with wisdom that seemed far beyond her years. Later that day, as Marcus performed routine maintenance on the ship's atmospheric recycler, he found both girls watching him work with intense concentration. They'd been doing this for days, observing everything he did with the focused attention of dedicated students. "Questions?" Marcus asked, wiping grease from his hands. "Your approach to mechanical systems is different from what we learned on Zerathi ships," Zara observed. "You seem to anticipate problems before they manifest in the diagnostic readings?" Marcus shrugged. "Experience, I guess. After a while, you learn to listen to what the ship is telling you." "Listen how?" Kira asked. It was a harder question to answer than Marcus had expected. How do you explain intuition to someone who's never experienced it? "The sounds are different when something's starting to fail. Vibrations change. Even the smell of the air sometimes." Zara made another note. "So you use multiple sensory inputs to assess system health, rather than relying solely on digital readouts." "I suppose so." "Father said human engineers were different from others," Kira said suddenly. "He said they could make machines work even when the machines insisted they were broken." "What else did your father say about humans?" Marcus asked, curious about the perspective of someone who'd fought alongside his species. The sisters exchanged a look, some silent communication passing between them. Finally, Zara spoke. He said humans were the only species he'd met who could be terrified and brave at the same time, that they would charge into certain death to save a stranger while being afraid of small flying insects. Marcus laughed, despite himself. He wasn't wrong about the insect thing. Had a captain once who could pilot through an asteroid field in a lightning storm, but needed someone else to remove spiders from his quarters. "Why do you do it?" Kira asked. "The terrifying, brave things, I mean." The question caught Marcus off guard. He'd been asked a lot of things during his years in space, but never that. "I don't know if what I do counts as brave." "You rescued us," Zara pointed out. "You had no obligation and much to lose. You could have been arrested for harboring undocumented refugees. Your ship could have been impounded, yet you chose to help anyway." Marcus thought about it as he finished the maintenance work. Was it bravery, or just an inability to walk away from suffering? Was there a difference? "Maybe bravery isn't about not being afraid," he said finally. "Maybe it's about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway." "Father said something similar," Zara admitted. "He said the bravest human he knew was a medic who cried every time someone was wounded, but never stopped trying to save them." That evening, as they sat in the ship's small common area after dinner, Marcus made an offer that surprised even him. "Would you like to learn some basic piloting skills?" The effect was immediate and dramatic. Both girls practically bounced with excitement, their natural Zarathi grace making the movement look like a coordinated dance. "You would teach us to pilot your ship?" Zara asked, barely containing her enthusiasm. "Basic maneuvers in open space," Marcus clarified. "Nothing fancy, and I'd be right there the whole time." "But every spacer should know how to handle a ship in an emergency." What followed were some of the most enjoyable hours Marcus had spent in years. Zara proved to be a natural pilot, with an intuitive understanding of three-dimensional movement that impressed him. She handled the controls with confidence, making tiny adjustments that kept the ship on course with minimal thruster usage. Kira was more cautious, but equally focused. She asked detailed questions about every system, wanting to understand not just how to use the controls, but why they worked the way they did. "You're both naturals," Marcus told them truthfully. "Your people must have strong spatial reasoning abilities." "Zarathi children learn to navigate in 3 dimensions from an early age," Zara explained. "Our cities are built in massive crystal formations, with multiple levels and branching passages. We must develop spatial awareness to avoid becoming lost." As they practiced, Marcus found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. Usually, space travel was a solitary experience, broken only by brief interactions at trading posts and space stations. Having companions who shared his interest in the technical aspects of spaceflight was surprisingly pleasant. But it was on the 5th day of their journey that something happened which would change everything. They were passing through the Meridian system when the Wandering Stars sensors detected another ship on an intercept course. Marcus immediately brought up the tactical display, frowning at what he saw. "What is it?" Zara asked, noticing his change in demeanor. "Probably nothing," Marcus said, but his hands were already moving to power up the ship's defensive systems. "Just being careful." The approaching ship was a Keth Raider, its distinctive insectoid design unmistakable on the sensor display. It was smaller than the Wandering Star, but likely faster and better armed. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he realized the raiders were specifically targeting them, adjusting course to match his evasive maneuvers. "Marcus," Kira said quietly, "what are those ships?" He didn't want to frighten them, but lying wouldn't help anyone. "Keth Raiders. Pirates, basically. They're probably just looking for easy cargo to steal." But as soon as the words left his mouth, Marcus knew he was wrong. The Keth weren't known for attacking single cargo ships in this sector unless they had specific intelligence about valuable cargo. His ship's manifest showed only standard trade goods, nothing worth the risk of attacking a human vessel, unless they weren't after cargo at all. The truth hit him like a physical blow. They were after Zara and Kira. Zarathi were prized by slavers throughout the galaxy for their intelligence, technical skills, and beautiful voices. Adult Zarathi were too proud and difficult to break, but children could be trained to serve as translators, technicians, or worse. The black market value of 2 healthy Zarathi youngsters would be enormous. Someone at Kepler Station must have reported their presence aboard his ship. "Listen to me very carefully," Marcus said, his voice taking on the hard edge of someone who'd seen combat. "I need you both to go to the emergency shelter in the cargo hold. There's food, water, and an independent life support system. If something happens to the main ship, you can survive there for days." "What about you?" Zara asked, fear creeping into her voice. "I'm going to get us out of this," Marcus replied with more confidence than he felt. The Keth ship was now close enough to communicate, and Marcus's console chimed with an incoming transmission. He accepted it, and the screen filled with the chittering insectoid features of a Keth captain. "Human vessel," the raider said in heavily accented galactic standard. "You will surrender your passengers and submit to boarding, or we will disable your ship and take them anyway." Marcus looked directly into the compound eyes of the alien pirate. "Sorry, but I don't speak bug. Transmission breaking up. Please repeat." The Keth captain's mandibles clicked in anger. "Do not test us, human. Our scans show 2 Zarathi juveniles aboard your vessel. Surrender them, and we will allow you to continue your journey." "Funny thing about scans," Marcus replied conversationally. "Sometimes they pick up cargo containers filled with Zarathi cultural artifacts. Easy mistake to make." "You have 30 seconds to comply before we disable your engines," the Keth warned. Marcus closed the communication channel and turned to find Zara and Kira still standing behind him, refusing to go to the shelter. "Why aren't you in the cargo hold?" he demanded. "Because we will not hide while you face danger alone," Zara said firmly. "Father taught us that courage is choosing to stand with your family when trouble comes." "I'm not your family," Marcus said, but even as the words came out, he realized they felt wrong. "You shared your food with us when we were starving," Kira said simply. "You promised to take us home. You are teaching us to fly among the stars. If that is not family, what is?" Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, some wall he'd built around his heart after Sarah died. These weren't just refugees he was helping. These weren't just passengers. They were his responsibility, his crew, his family. "All right," he said. "If you're staying, then your crew. Zara, take the navigation station. Kira, monitor the communication systems. If I tell you to do something, do it immediately without question. Understood?" "Understood, Captain," they said in unison, and Marcus felt a fierce pride at how quickly they adapted to the crisis. The Keth ship opened fire with disruptor beams designed to disable rather than destroy. Marcus threw the wandering star into evasive maneuvers, using every trick he'd learned in his years of dodging pirates and customs officials. The ship shuddered under impacts as the Keth weapons found their mark. Systems overloaded and alarms blared, but Marcus kept them moving, using the ship's superior maneuverability to stay ahead of the raiders' targeting systems. "Zara, I need you to plot a course to that asteroid field," Marcus shouted over the noise. "Something tricky, lots of turns." Her fingers flew over the navigation controls, calculating a path through the dense field of space rocks that surrounded a dead planet. "Course laid in. Kira, send a distress signal on all frequencies. Emergency code 77 Alpha. "What does that code mean?" she asked as she transmitted. "Pirates attacking civilians," Marcus explained, rolling the ship to avoid another blast. "Any military patrol in the area will respond." But even as he said it, Marcus knew help wouldn't arrive in time. They were on their own. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic jumble of rock and ice that could crush an unwary ship in seconds. Marcus had navigated fields like this before, but never while under fire, never with passengers depending on him. As they plunged into the maze of floating debris, Marcus realized that this would require more than skill. It would require the kind of crazy, desperate courage that his species had become famous for throughout the galaxy. "Hold on," he told his crew, his family. "This is going to get interesting." The asteroid field was a nightmare of spinning rock and deadly debris, but Marcus flew through it like he was born to dance among the stars. The wandering star twisted and rolled between massive chunks of planetary remains, her hull scraping against smaller fragments that left trails of sparks in the vacuum. Behind them, the Keth raider followed with ruthless determination. The insectoid pirates were skilled pilots themselves, and their ship was more maneuverable than Marcus had hoped. Disruptor fire lit up the space around them, turning chunks of asteroid into glowing fragments. "They're gaining on us," Zara reported from the navigation station, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Captain," Kira called from the communication console, "I'm picking up multiple signals. The distress call worked. A patrol ship is responding, but they're 40 minutes out." 40 minutes. Marcus could keep them alive for maybe 10. He threw the ship into a spiraling dive toward a massive asteroid, one easily 3 times the size of their ship. At the last possible second, he pulled up and skimmed along its surface, using the rock's gravity well to slingshot them toward a cluster of smaller debris. The Keth pilot tried to follow the maneuver but misjudged the approach. Their ship clipped the asteroid's surface, sending it into an uncontrolled spin. Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before realizing that the damaged raider was now firing wildly, spraying disruptor beams in all directions. One of those random shots struck a nearby asteroid, shattering it into a cloud of high-velocity fragments that peppered the wandering star's hull. Alarms shrieked as systems overloaded, and Marcus felt the ship's responses becoming sluggish. "Hull breach in Section 7. Zara reported. "Emergency seals holding, but we've lost maneuvering thruster 3. Without full maneuvering capability, they were dead. The Keth would disable them within minutes, board the ship, and take the girls. Marcus had made a promise to get them safely to Vela Prime, and he was about to break it just like he'd broken his promise to Sarah. "There," Kira said suddenly, pointing at the tactical display. "That asteroid formation, it looks like a tunnel." Marcus followed her gaze and saw what she meant. 3 large asteroids had collided and fused together in such a way that they created a narrow passage through their combined mass. It was barely wider than their ship, a death trap that no sane pilot would attempt. "That's suicide," Marcus said automatically. "Is it?" Zara asked, studying the sensor readings. "The Keth ship is larger than ours. If we could make it through, they couldn't follow." Marcus looked at the passage again, calculating angles and clearances. It was possible, barely. But if he misjudged by even a few meters, they'd be smeared across ancient rock like paint. The Keth raider had recovered from its collision and was closing in again. Marcus could see the glow of charging weapons as they prepared to disable his ship permanently. "Do it," he said, and pushed the wandering star toward the asteroid tunnel at full speed. What followed was the longest 30 seconds of Marcus's life. The ship screamed through the narrow passage with centimeters to spare on either side. At one point, the hull actually scraped against the tunnel wall, sending vibrations through the entire vessel. Marcus could hear metal groaning under stress, could smell the acrid scent of overheating electronics. Behind them, the Keth raider attempted to follow despite the size difference. For a moment, Marcus thought they might actually make it. Then physics caught up with hubris. The pirate ship wedged itself in the tunnel's narrowest point, its hull grinding against rock as momentum carried it forward into an immovable obstacle. The explosion lit up the asteroid field like a small star. Marcus brought the wandering star to a stop on the far side of the tunnel, hands shaking with reaction. They'd done it. They'd actually survived. "Status report," he managed to say. "Hull integrity holding," Zara reported. "Life support nominal. We've lost one maneuvering thruster and have minor systems damage throughout the ship. But nothing critical." "Communication systems functional," Kira added. "The patrol ship is still inbound. Estimated arrival in 35 minutes. Marcus slumped back in his chair, adrenaline slowly fading. They'd made it. The girls were safe. But as he looked at Zara and Kira, he saw something in their eyes that made him uncomfortable. They were looking at him like he was some kind of hero. "That was incredible flying," Zara said softly. "I've never seen anything like it." "Just doing my job," Marcus replied, trying to downplay what had happened. "Your job?" Kira asked. "Marcus, you nearly died to protect us. That passage was impossible, but you did it anyway." Before Marcus could respond, the communication console chimed with an incoming transmission. The screen showed a human officer in the uniform of the Colonial Defense Force. "This is Captain Rivera of the CDF vessel, Intrepid," the woman said. "We received your distress call and are en route to your position. Are you in need of immediate assistance?" "This is Marcus Chen, captain of the civilian vessel, Wandering Star," Marcus replied. "We were attacked by Keth raiders but managed to escape. The pirate ship has been destroyed." Captain Rivera's eyebrows rose. "You destroyed a Keth raider?" "They destroyed themselves trying to follow us through an asteroid tunnel," Marcus clarified. "We just got lucky." "Mr. Chen, our sensors show massive debris signatures consistent with a raider-class vessel." "You're telling me you led them into a trap that destroyed their ship?" "Something like that." There was a pause as Captain Rivera consulted with someone off-screen. When she returned her attention to Marcus, her expression was thoughtful. "Mr. Chen, the Colonial Defense Force has been tracking that particular raider for months. They've attacked 17 civilian vessels in this sector, killing dozens of people. By eliminating them, you've saved countless lives." "I was just trying to protect my passengers," Marcus said. "Speaking of which," Captain Rivera continued, "we show 2 Zarathi life signs aboard your vessel. Can you explain their presence?" Marcus felt his stomach tighten. This was the moment he'd been dreading. Transporting undocumented refugees was technically illegal, even if it was morally right. The CDF could arrest him, impound his ship, and turn Zara and Kira over to colonial authorities. "They're refugees," he said simply. "Their ship was destroyed in an accident. I'm taking them to family on Vela Prime." Captain Rivera studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Chen, are you familiar with the Colonial Refugee Protection Act?" Marcus wasn't, and his expression must have shown it. "The act states that any civilian who provides aid and transport to legitimate refugees is acting under the authority of the colonial government," Rivera explained. "Furthermore, given your actions today in destroying a known pirate vessel, I'm authorized to issue you a commendation and a monetary reward." Marcus blinked in surprise. "A reward?" 50,000 credits, Rivera confirmed. "Standard bounty for eliminating raiders in this sector. The credits will be transferred to your account within 24 hours. After the Intrepid departed, and they were underway to Vela Prime, Marcus found himself sitting in the ship's common area with Zara and Kira, trying to process everything that had happened. The 50,000 credit reward would clear his debts and give him financial stability for the first time in years. "Marcus," Zara said quietly, "we need to discuss something important." "What's that?" The sisters exchanged one of their meaningful looks before Zara continued. "We have been thinking about our father's death and about what kind of life awaits us on Vela Prime." Marcus felt a chill of apprehension. "Having second thoughts about the mining colony?" "Not exactly," Kira said. But we have been wondering if there might be other options. Such as? You said your ship needs a crew, Zara pointed out. Kira and I have been learning your systems quickly. We could be useful to you. Marcus stared at them. You want to stay aboard the Wandering Star? We want to stay with our family, Kira said simply. I'm not your family, Marcus started to say, then stopped. The automatic denial felt wrong, like a lie he was telling himself. You shared your food with us when we were strangers, Zara said. You risked your life to protect us from pirates. You taught us to pilot your ship and treated us as equals during the crisis. If those are not the actions of family, what are? Marcus thought about Sarah, about the promises he'd made and broken, about the loneliness of his life among the stars, the empty conversations and meaningless transactions that had filled his days for years. The mining colonies would offer you stability, he said, a chance to rebuild your lives with other Zarathi. Life on a cargo hauler is dangerous and uncertain. So is life in the asteroid field today, Kira pointed out, but we faced it together. Your father wanted you to have a future, Marcus protested. Father wanted us to have a family, Zara corrected. He always said that home is not a place, but the people who choose to stand with you when darkness comes. Marcus looked at these two remarkable young beings who had somehow become the most important people in his life. They were right, he realized. They were family, in every way that mattered. All right, he said finally. But if you're going to be crew on this ship, you'll need to pull your weight. That means technical training, navigation certification, and learning to handle emergencies. We accept these terms, Zara said formally, but her smile was radiant. One more thing, Marcus added. We'll need to make this official. Adoption papers, legal guardianship, the whole process. I won't have you traveling without proper documentation. You would adopt us? Kira asked, her voice filled with wonder. If you'll have me as family, Marcus replied. The sisters' response was immediate and overwhelming. They threw their arms around him in a group hug that nearly knocked him off his chair, and for the first time since Sarah's death, Marcus felt like he was truly home. 6 months later, the Wandering Star was arguably the most successful independent cargo hauler in the sector. Zara had proven to be not only an exceptional pilot, but also a skilled negotiator, able to secure contracts that Marcus never could have landed on his own. Kira had developed into a technical genius, keeping their ship running at peak efficiency and even improving several of its systems. But more than that, they had become a real family. They shared meals and stories, celebrated successes, and supported each other through difficulties. The ship that had once echoed with loneliness now rang with laughter and the sound of Zarathi harmonies. Marcus had kept his promise to deliver them safely to Vela Prime, but in the end, they had chosen a different destination. They had chosen each other. And as the Wandering Star jumped to hyperspace on their way to another cargo run, Marcus realized that Sarah would have approved of the choice he'd made. She'd always said that the best promises were the ones that led you home. He'd shared his meal with 2 starving alien sisters, expecting nothing in return. What they had given him was beyond anything he could have imagined. A family, a purpose, and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the smallest acts of kindness. In the vast darkness between the stars, the Wandering Star carried its crew toward whatever tomorrow might bring, guided by the unbreakable bonds of chosen family and the promise that they would face it together.